Hi, everyone. Welcome to Meeting Death Consciously, Finding Courage and Grace. This is going to be an interesting topic today, right? Death and dying is not something that a lot of people talk about, not even within assisted living facilities or nursing homes, which I find really interesting. And I want to give a shout out, well, to all of you, but I'm going to give a shout out to Jason because when he was writing his bio, he used the phrase meeting death consciously. And I thought, what a great title. And then when I thought about all of you guys, it's like, yes, finding courage and grace. Gosh, yes, I think things that we would all love to have. So today we'll talk about the experiences of these four amazing individuals. And what I absolutely love is that although they've got a lot of experience collectively in terms of using psilocybin, potentially other psychedelic medicines as well, what they represent are three different types of settings. So Amy and Arlene participated in a group psilocybin retreat in Oregon, where psilocybin is legal, at least at the state level. Jason participated in psilocybin ceremonies in conjunction with a psilocybin church and their program, Sacred Passages. And Deb, Grateful Deb, and you can guess why potentially. Grateful Deb participated in a clinical trial at Johns Hopkins University. So you'll hear a whole lot more about that. But I'm going to quickly introduce you to everybody, and then we're going to turn it over to them. And like I say, please hold your questions to the end. I'm going to start with Amy. Amy holds a PhD in what is it? It's I gotta read this.
Mythological
Myth,
studies, comparative
myth,
myth.
mythological studies with an emphasis in depth psychology. And what, okay, I just hopped on her website, Amy, and I saw, get this, guys, her dissertation topic: comic book experience, reading comic books in mystico visionary texts. Pretty cool. Um, Deb, Deb is now a psilocybin facilitator and longtime body worker. And one little note about Deb, not to steal her thunder, but she's the type of woman who in the 80s became a chaplain so she could visit AIDS patients in the hospital, because otherwise you were banned from visiting AIDS patients. So shout out to Deb for that. Arlene will obviously tell her story, but I always like to think she left high-powered career in business, which I'm sure was stressful, to work at the Survivorship Collective, of which Amy is actually a co-founder. So you'll hear a whole lot more about that as well. And then Jason literally got a new lease on life, I think, from his psilocybin experience, and really looking forward to hearing more about that. So what I'd like to do is start off with having everybody tell us basically a little bit about their background, how they came to choosing psilocybin. Then we'll get into more about the whys and the whats and everything else later on. But Jason, let's start with you.
Okay. Well, my name is Jason. I think I'm a quadriplegic. I was injured in a water skiing accident when I was 19, left me paralyzed, and just kind of tried to move on with life and do the thing, and pain is kind of a secondary condition to a spinal cord injury, oftentimes, and so I've spent a lot of time trying to figure out how to like navigate pain or coexist with this pain or actually trying to get rid of the pain, and that actually, so I came to psilocybin as from a medical aspect of just trying to figure out how to navigate life and figured out that this might be a path that helps with that. So that's kind of where I'm coming from.
I said keep it brief, but you didn't have to be that brief.
Well, I'm sorry. I figured you would kind of lead the topic from there. What else would you like to know? I mean, I could ramble for half an hour. I'm not shy at all. So.
What? Sure. Why did you? Okay, we'll come back. We'll come back to you. I'll go to Deb. Deb likes to talk. So Deb, please share your story.
Okay, it's great to be here, and thanks to everyone who showed up. And I love Christine, and I'm on the advisory board of EOLPC as well. Um, I've been um, I've been interested in psychedelics since the 80s. I mean, I was a Grateful Dead follower, went out to the San Francisco area, went to acupuncture school, went to massage school, was always in the human energy field, always knew that we were vibrational. And then during the AIDS years, got really involved with, as I was living there and watched my friends get very bad care and then die. And then I started sitting with people and using psychedelics back in the 90s, I would say. So I went to, I'm in the first class at Naropa. I was MAPS trained, Pratty trained. Um, I work with psilocybin and LSD and ketamine. And what happened for me was when I got my diagnosis, I already knew how powerful that psychedelics were. So I wanted to go to a Dead show and get my psychedelics there, but I was way too sick. So I was like, please, please, please let me get into the Hopkins study. This was 2011, and I was accepted in the Hopkins study. This is back in the day where I think I was, they were looking for 44 participants and they couldn't even fill that. This is 2011. And then in 2012, they called me up and said, you've passed all the physical tests, you've passed all the other tests. Are you going to come back and do this? And at that time, I said, well, I'm going to die anyhow. So yeah, I'll do it. I was so sick. I couldn't even go back there. I could barely stand. I could barely talk. So when I went back, I did the Hopkins study. And I'm just going to throw this in there. Mary Casamano and Marilyn Clark were my guides. I was really gifted with some of the very best guides. And of course, Roland and Bill was there and all those folks. And I've been doing this ever since because I've been a coach, a transformational coach, a psychedelic coach and guide, and I'm a PQ coach as well. And I just know that, um, our body really is just the vehicle for everything we've been thinking. Thank you.
Thank you. Excellent. Amy, let's go over to you.
Sure. I currently live with metastatic breast to bone cancer. I was diagnosed as stage 4 in 2017. My doctors at Memorial Sloan Kettering said I had about 2 years to live, that I should quit my job and do what I want to do. But I took but as I sit here today, my scans show no evidence of disease, even though, I still have the metastatic cancer inside of me, but my medications, it's called Ibrance, is the one I'm on. It's kind of an older medication, but with Ibrance and letrozole, I was able to, my bones grew back and like pushed back the metastases, so you cannot see anything like that in my scans currently. So that is really exciting. Now, I guess I feel personally that it was more than just the medicine and the science that has helped me stay healthy for over 8 years now with stage 4 metastatic disease. And a part of it has had to do with my my mental state, I believe. In order to kind of stay up on top of that, of cancer, and not let it be pushing me down, I've gone to years of Jungian therapy has been very helpful. And actually my program after I was diagnosed and told I had 2 years and do what I want to do, I went back to school and got my PhD in comparative myth with an emphasis in depth psychology. And through my studies and my own depth psychological work, I think that that's had a big impact on my ability to remain disease-free. But also a huge part is my engagement with psychedelic drugs. Before I received my diagnosis, I was growing my own mushrooms and experimenting with them on my own on a more casual basis. But since my diagnosis, I've kind of changed the way I think about my use of psilocybin, and I understand it I appreciate it on a deeper spiritual level, and with its use, I've been able to kind of come to terms with how to live with this deadly disease. Um, I'll stop there, but I'll just quickly say, what I've done since I was diagnosed with psilocybin is to help found the Survivorship Collective, which is a group by and for cancer survivors that seeks to provide access to legal under state of Oregon law group psilocybin therapy. And Arlene and I have, who is also part of the Survivorship Collective, we have gone on one of these group therapy sessions, and it was a very amazing learning experience. And I'll stop there because maybe Arlene will speak more to that.
Yeah, we'll turn it over to Arlene, but Amy, why don't you go ahead and put the link in the chat. I'll also, by the way, I'll send that link out when I notify everybody about the availability of the recording, but yeah, that would be great. Yeah, Arlene, share your story, please.
Morning, everyone. I'm Arlene Trauman. I was diagnosed with cancer, stage 1A, at age 29. Did the triple whammy of surgery, chemo, radiation, and by the time I was done with treatment, it was December 2019. I've been on remission ever since, but by the time I had finished treatment, I had just finished grad school. I was broke, unemployed, depressed, anxious, and then COVID hits. And no one had warned me how I was going to hit my mental low after the cancer treatment. Not during, not before, but after. And I was just desperately seeking for mental help because I kept thinking to myself, like, I didn't go through all of this treatment to not feel alive after I was so-called cured on paper. And yeah, I tried everything out there. Traditional talk therapy wasn't working. It wasn't enough. Meditation, journaling, Pilates, yoga, all of it, everything I could get my hands on. And it wasn't until I came across Michael Pollan's How to Change Your Mind, I was already a fan of his from his previous books, that I found out how safe psychedelics were. And with that, I was able to gain access through a friend. We rented a cabin in the mountains for a weekend. And while my friends were doing it recreationally, here I am in the corner of the room doing like a self-guided therapy session. And it was the most profound healing, more than I had ever expected. And ever since then, I was like, oh, how do I become a trip sitter? How do I pay it forward? How do I help others? And it was like, oh, this is 2022, not legal in California, still not legal in California. No idea how to become a trip sitter, no idea how to help pay it forward until I met one of the co-founders of Survivorship Collective in Hamilton, who said that she started this nonprofit to combine psychedelics and helping out the cancer community. And I've been a part of it ever since. As Amy had mentioned earlier, we are participants of a previous retreat. And just the preparation and doing it very thoughtfully and not in a recreational way with Indigenous wisdom keepers and their training and study for like 2 decades and their music just made it so much more powerful, way beyond my little self-guided therapy session from my very first time. But that's where I'm at now. And with that, I guess I'll turn it back to Chris.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll shift and talk about death. I know if I asked everybody here, what your view of death is, we would get many, 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 maybe even 142 different ideas of what death means to you. But Arlene, I'll stay with you. And yeah, what was your belief around dying and death prior to the psilocybin journeys?
So before, I was desperately seeking religion and belief in heaven and an afterlife, but like I just never really felt it deep down inside. I kept just thinking that it was just going to be a black void once I passed. Like I would just lose all my memory, who I am, all of it. And I love to think this like right before going to sleep and freak myself out in the middle of the night. And just like was not willing to let go. I'm like, I don't want to lose all my memories, all these precious memories of this life. So I was very afraid of dying. And with my most recent psychedelic trip, it has changed and completely shifted my perspective. That I feel like there's something more after this that has made me believe in reincarnation, that life goes on, that this is not it. And with that, it gives me a great sense of peace. And oddly enough, more alive, and just, feel braver to live and do the things that I want to do and take more risk with that.
Wow, that's beautiful. You do remind me, I want to say up front, we know that psilocybin and other psychedelics are not for everybody. And certainly there are other ways to find peace with your death and dying, to find belief in death and dying that is meaningful to you. But, today we're going to talk about psilocybin. So in the case of these individuals, and for many that I certainly know of, and the people that Deb has worked with, they have found what Arlene was describing. So yeah, Jason, let's shift over to you in terms of what was your belief before about death and dying, and then did the psilocybin shift those beliefs?
Well, I was raised Catholic, so it never really became like an experiential thing. It was more of this is what you're supposed to believe. This is, so it always felt kind of like wishful thinking, or it was this, just theories about what was out there. Whenever I had my accident, I like began down the dying path. I was on the back of the boat. I was drowning. I was, actually dying. I could feel myself leaving, right? And and then they pulled me back in and shoved a bunch of tubes in me, and kind of kept me going. And I kind of pushed that aside to move on with life. And then during my first uh, we're on the before. So I didn't really know what to expect. Let's circle back to me if you wouldn't mind, Chris. Having a little bit of struggle here.
Oh, okay, I don't know if you want to answer this question now too, but it did strike me, you spoke in terms of near-death experiences. How maybe did that relate to your psilocybin experience?
Well, uh, I probably need you to circle back to me just for a moment. I get lightheaded as part of my condition, and so I just need
Okay,
need a few minutes to kind of to regroup.
great. Thank you. All right, Amy.
Oh, well, prior to experimenting with psilocybin and also prior to the group therapy situation, which is a whole different thing, as Arlene alluded to, it kind of took things to the next level as far as healing. But prior to that, I was raised in a evangelical fundamentalist Christian environment, which ultimately I didn't jibe with and needed to reject. And after growing up that way, I went to school to study comparative religion, religious studies at UCSB. So I turned around from being kind of an insider in the religion to being an outsider, looking and studying it from social science perspectives. And it was basically a rejection, a dissection and rejection of my religious upbringing. But I've always been interested in religion. I've continued my involvement with it at an academic level my whole life. But with psilocybin, I received a sense, like Arlene spoke about, that this is not all there is, that my anxiety about death looming doesn't it's not the end all, it's not the end, so I don't need to be stressed about um I don't have to have an overall stressful approach to like treating my disease, trying to stay healthy. All of this is like, it's not a zero-sum game, because I feel that when my body passes, there is more to human consciousness than just this physical incarnation. That's basically it. I have received the message and the sense through psilocybin that my consciousness will go on, just like Arlene said. And that's a huge it's a really different way to approach living with a disease like this. So I don't know about like exactly what's going to happen, but I do believe that consciousness persists after our physical incarnation here. And that's been a shift from kind of my attempt to deal with religion scientifically. It's allowed me to kind of reapproach spirituality because I felt I had to reject it given my negative experience with fundamentalism. You know, I felt like I can't look into spiritual things because that's what those people did. And I didn't like the way they did it. But I realized that they're not in charge of it. I can make my own spirituality. And so psilocybin has helped me create my own spirituality and understand my own approach to these massive existential issues.
Yeah, you remind me of the role of spirituality. We're going to come back to that because I think that's huge. But yeah, Deb, let's shift over to you and tell us what your beliefs were and now are.
Well, that's a good, really good question for me because I've talked to dead people since I was young, really like a kid. And in my psychedelic experience, that's really led me to talk as I guide more people and as I've sat with many people as they were dying, they experienced that too. But the thing that I want to say here too is the universe expands through us. So, and this is really kind of um, this idea of life after death. It's always been something really important to me, and I started this nonprofit called Serve Medicine with my husband, who was an attorney, my husband Donnie, and pretty soon after we started, he died from a stage 4 cancer diagnosis that we didn't know he had. He died in like 3 weeks' time from the time of his diagnosis. He was such a healthy, amazing, like living, incredible meditator, runner, looked like $1,000,000 kind of guy. We didn't know he had it, but I got to tell you, I hear him all the time now. So I know that this never ends. I know that we really go on forever. And in my psychedelic journey, I remember the first time when I was in the Hopkins. Hopkins has it's a 2-session protocol. So the first time I got a placebo, and I remember because I was a tripper, right? I remember thinking, oh, this is terrible. How are you doing this to me? I have cancer and you're giving me this terrible experience. I might not even be alive by the time you come back and give me the second one. It was so good for my victimhood. And then the second time, I get Jesus on the cross, and I'm a Jewish girl with Jesus on the cross. And I think to myself, okay, I know this is going to be really important and this is really big. What do you have to tell me? And Jesus says, you're really attached to your struggle. And I'm like, what? And the next thing I know, I go passing through lifetime after lifetime after lifetime, crawling in the dirt, walking the Trail of Tears. It took me 10 years to integrate that journey as I traveled to Boulder and Netherlands and the Sierras in California, and knowing I had been many, many times through those lifetimes. And and I really believe that, we're not just here once, and that's the really good news, is that we're here to, like, you can't get it wrong. You're going to return, you're going to have another experience, and this isn't meant to be forever. And the people and the things that come through our lives are really just these amazing experiences. So for me, I like this little story. I don't know if you've ever heard this one. There's 2 babies and they're talking in the womb. And one baby says to the other, so do you believe that there's life after delivery? And the second baby says, oh, yeah, I think there is. I mean, I think we get to, I think we get to maybe eat, we get to use our mouths, we get to maybe walk. And the first baby says, oh no, there's nothing after life after delivery. We get fed by an umbilical cord. No, we're not going to walk. No. And the other baby says, well, I feel like, what about our mother? Isn't she here for us? And sometimes I can hear her voice if I listen really carefully. And the other baby says, what are you talking about? That, if she was here, she would be doing it right now. And the other baby says, like, well, but I think we're here to experience lots of light and lots of something different. And, maybe we are here for life after delivery. So I feel like if that's really how we look at things, and we feel like this is it, we're really missing a really big part. And there's more to that little vignette, but in the interest of time, I'm going to skip it. You get the idea. And I really think that, this is our opportunity to have, thank you for that heart. And this is really our opportunity to have our best experience in the now. But, we're never going to make it by saying, fuck cancer. Like it's never going to happen. You have to love cancer. You have to be in your state of love. And that's the reason why I do my work and I have my nonprofit.
Yeah, you're reminding me of so many questions, but before we go on to Jason, you're reminding me of something Thomas Hartle said, and Thomas Hartle was the first Canadian to receive psilocybin therapy through a program out of Health Canada, and he will talk about his cancer as consciousness, but he also says that people say they're going to fight cancer. He goes, how can you win a battle against yourself? You can't. You can't win a battle against yourself. And he called the cancer almost me, and a consciousness, as much as we all here are consciousness. So yeah, Deb, I really appreciate that. So Jason,
I'm
you okay
back.
to
I'm
go?
back I'm back for the moment. It's funny because I'm going to apologize here because I as part of my condition, I'm barely sputtering. Right? It's like I've been right in the bubble of life and death for so long that even though I sit here and I can sit here and I can have a conversation. I'm like just barely here. So sometimes my blood pressure will drop out and I'll just like lose vision or all whatever else. So if I fade away, it's not to ignore you all. It's just, kind of struggling a little bit today. But life is absolutely fascinating. When I am here, it's exciting because it's like I keep dipping in and out of like this reality. And it feels like we're all like right on the bubble of life and death, and we just forget that, right? It's like we can go to the grocery store and die, and that's the end of it, right? And I just get like these constant, frequent reminders, and it's really cool because then I can come back and just like play and know that all right, I'm just gonna dip out at some point. That's cool, and come back and play for a while, So life has become for me just honestly ecstatic. I've been skydiving a couple times since my psilocybin journey. I nearly died about a month ago. Was like right on the bubble. Was given the choice, just do you want to continue on kind of thing, and so it's so wild to just uh, wake up and if I wake up, kind of just run with it. If not, that's cool too. But the psilocybin journeys have given me a taste of, or not a taste of, but a certainty that there's something else. That it's like, I feel like I've experienced something that gives me there is no fear. It's like if I don't wake up, that's cool. If I do, let's have a blast. Let's love each other. Let's find out how to, you know, make the day a little brighter for someone next to me. And then that's it.
I can want to like to respond to
Yeah.
that sense and that statement, and also the Deb's concept of loving cancer. For me, cancer, I always say, gave me back my life, because prior, when I was diagnosed at stage 4 with 2 years to live, I was working as an attorney on Wall Street, and I was definitely not loving that and kind of cramming myself into this mold that would be acceptable to my family, society in general. And once I got cancer, it was honestly, it's like a gift that has kept on giving for reasons um, such as because I look at life again as a gift. Every day it's a gift. Every day it's a gift, and it has allowed me. It's spurred me on to pursue just those things that I'm most interested in pursuing, and in that sense, I have come to love cancer because I wasn't living my best life before I had it. So I feel the sentiments of these other speakers.
Yeah, love that. Yeah, so Jason, though, you do remind me, many people say that near-death experiences are like psychedelic experiences. I don't know what your near-death experiences were like, but does that resonate with you at all?
Kind of. I mean, there's definitely similarities. Um, my near-death experience wasn't as deep as you hear some people's, mine, I could feel myself dying. I had this sense of indifference, like, well, this chapter is done. It's cool. There's nothing to worry about. The hospital aspect was much scarier than the dying aspect in my experience. What they do in there, that's the spooky stuff. Um, and then like with journeys, one of my first journeys, well, my accident, I drowned. I was in a water skiing accident and was drowning in the water and then even on the back of the boat. So there's always been this kind of like trauma response anytime my ears would go below the water, right? Well, then in my first journey, um, it was like the most loving, gentle drowning you could imagine. It was like, shh, you'll be okay. And as soon as I released and I just let go, it was like the word love doesn't quite cut it at all. It's like this peacefulness, this sense of being home. So there are definitely similarities, but there are definitely they're different every time, it feels like. So, I mean, I can only talk from my one experience, but for me, it feels like the journeys are cumulative and that my near-death experience was just one of them.
Great. Deb, I'm going to come back and ask you a question that you reminded me of. And that is, you all expressed your beliefs about what death looked like, but what is it like when you work with an atheist?
I have to say, I haven't worked with anybody who's an atheist. There's so many people to choose from. I think if you know that you're going to work with me, you know where I'm coming from. And also I'm a psychedelic guide that works with touch, and some psychedelic guides don't do that either. I mean, for me, the touch and there's that's like an integral part of really moving through our energy system, which, if you've ever seen somebody die, if you've ever been present with somebody who leaves their body, that's what you see change. That's what I've seen change. I've seen people leave their bodies many, many times. So I know we're energy. That's how it goes. I think
would,
Go ahead.
I could just say that in Survivorship Collective, Arlene, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel that we have also not been working with atheists, say, where people that come to us are very open-minded spiritually, and they're seeking, they're open to experience. So I don't know. I'm sure atheists out there are doing it, but we haven't encountered it.
I think we just, our vibe attracts our tribe. Like, that's just how it goes.
We do know, though, from studies. Hey, I'm going to pick on Harry down there. Harry, have you ever worked with an atheist?
Don't think I have. I'm not sure. I've worked with people who say they don't have a lot of beliefs, but I'm not sure someone ever said I'm a hardcore atheist.
Yeah, interesting. I know that in the research studies there have been, and from what I can recall, then the shift, there is a shift, but generally speaking, it might be more into, well, there's a nature consciousness.
I mean, maybe to give an example, I'm not working psychedelically, but I've been talking with my former mother-in-law who's 90 and in rehab, and we've talked, and I've said, "What do you believe happens at the end of life?" She said, "Nothing, kaput. That's it. You're done." And so, as we've talked, and I have talked to her about when her daughter, who passed away, came to me and spoke to me, she leaned into that and said, that really gives me hope. So she's not as hardcore as she makes herself out to be. I think there's something there.
And interesting, doesn't want to admit it.
Yeah.
Jason,
You know-
you reminded me. I'm going to say one thing real quick. Jason reminded me of a story. So, out of a psychedelic death worker study that a University of Chicago researcher and I did, there was one reflection from a psychedelic death worker that has always stood out, and that psilocybin gave her clients the ability to lose the fear of the unknown, and certainly that is what death is. Even if you believe that we go on, there is that fear of the unknown, and it's like that's one of the greatest gifts we can get for almost anything
Oh no, you know what?
in our
I'm kind of on the
lives
verge of it too.
is that
So
is
yeah.
that letting go. So yeah, Amy, you were going to say something.
Oh, well, I've spoken with people. I'm kind of interested because of my fundamentalist background. I feel that I kind of suffer from a little bit of religious trauma, and I think a lot of the fear of dying comes maybe not from the unknown for people, but from what they've been told awaits them on the other side, which is like eternal hellfire. And I think that that is kind of a thing that sticks with many people and makes them have an especially hard time grappling with a diagnosis or a situation, that is terminal. And I think that, again, that the spiritual experience through psilocybin helps chip away at maybe this negative messaging that people have received and that have taken it on as like a type of religious trauma.
Yeah, Deb, you're going to say something?
Yeah, I was speaking to someone just the other day and asked about his beliefs in the afterlife, or what does he think happens after we die, and he said, I think that people are much more living in their memories, and that's what he feels is happening, that people are connecting to their past memories, and there's so many more memories as they age, and of course as friends pass, and that was his opinion of what happens. He's not used to really thinking that there's any end of life thing, but that was his estimation of it. So I would say, and he doesn't identify himself as a very religious person. He identifies himself as a spiritual person. So I hope maybe gives you a little insight into that one.
Yeah. I'm gonna stay on you, but I'm gonna just provide a little context. As I said up front, there are three different experiences in terms of setting: the clinical trial, the group psilocybin retreat, and the sanctuary, the psilocybin church. Sanctuary spelled Psanctuary. But Deb, you participated in the Johns Hopkins clinical trial, and I'd like to hear your thoughts on sort of the pros and cons of what a trial looks like, as compared to how you work, or perhaps how Amy, Arlene, and Jason all experienced it. But I also want to make a comment here first. All right, so Deb was part of the Johns Hopkins trial. There was NYU, Johns Hopkins, and UCLA, sort of the modern granddaddies, or the granddaddies of the modern era of psychedelic research as it relates to end of life. And then for the longest time, there was hardly anything, maybe one or two more studies. Now, I got to tell you, there's an explosion of psilocybin and other psychedelic studies into end of life context. And so if anybody's interested, I've got this whole list. But they're looking at Parkinson's patients. They're looking at early Alzheimer's. They're looking at pain. They're looking at stroke survivors. So they're looking at using psilocybin in a number of ways that, in the old days, we really weren't exploring. But yes, Deb, let me turn it over to you and explain, again, pros and cons of a clinical trial.
Well, I have it, and you're right, it's being used for all kinds of things. I have 2 retreats coming up, one in November, one in December. One's for people who've had chemo that feel like they're still living those side effects, and people that have other cancer side effects. I know for me, I lived my chemo side effects for many, many, many years. So my chemo was 2011. My Hopkins journey was 2012. I really didn't feel like I was walking through my chemo side effects, or they were dissolving till 2017 or 2018. I still have some. I don't talk about them anymore I still have them. So I really feel like that's a real important part of it. And the other retreat I have is for grief. And they're all using microdosing, following it, because I think that the idea of a continual use of psilocybin in particular is really helpful. I know neurologically, it heals every single cell of your body. Psilocybin is my preferred substance. So when I was in the psilocybin study at Hopkins, I know there was just the preliminaries to get in were so grueling. I almost threw in the towel a number of times. I could barely hold a pencil. I had to go through these questions. I had to do an EKG, come back and do like all these physical tests. I had to meet with all these different practitioners over and over again. And I know following it, I never felt like I had enough follow-up because, of course, there's a limited time that, there's only a certain amount of time allotted. There's a certain budget in that's allotted. So I know that that's exactly why I got a coach when I finished my treatment, because I knew I had a real good 6 months, and everybody in my house told me that too. We like you a lot better. You're a lot more fun to be with, and all that kind of stuff. And they were really right. But I got to tell you, I had to get a coach. I after like 6 months, I went back to I was back in my regular job, back in my regular life, back with my regular family, with my regular thoughts. And that's the stuff that you would really need to have continue to last, because, and people will go on meds, I believe that our emotional body, we have an emotional guidance system, and this whole, I think it kind of makes sense to me that the world we're living in right now has followed up 30 years of antidepressants. Oh, what do you know? We've all been muting these emotional feelings for the last 30 years. Don't feel that. That's too unpleasant. And now you want to talk about unpleasant? This is just the tip of the iceberg, because what's underneath is all the unpleasantness. And that's where people are. If you're focused on your unpleasantness, get more unpleasantness. So I feel like, the change starts with us, and I never wanted anyone to have to go through what I went through with Hopkins. I was afraid I wasn't going to get selected. I knew that I had to get selected. I didn't know a way out of my thinking. I really wanted to die. Things were so bad. When I look back and I think about that time, I think to myself, that's not even the same me. But even though I love psychedelics, even though I was a happy-go-lucky Grateful Dead person, I can just tell you that at the study level, um, you know, and the other thing too is, they used to say one trip is enough, right? One trip will take you, and it's going to be long. Well, that's just really not how it is. It's like, because you're going to go back to your thinking unless you've decided to really integrate it into your life, and until you become the person that you were for those 6 hours. And that's the more difficult part. It's to stay in the believing and the higher level thinking, no matter what's going on around you, no matter what the conditions, situations, or circumstances are. And we all need training in that. And those studies don't offer that.
Yeah, excellent. I mean, you remind me. So in Canada, where they have this special access program, you have to be a Canadian, though, in order to apply for it. This same Thomas Hartle participated in 7 psilocybin journeys. And so to hear the arc of his many journeys, he started out by needing to reduce debilitating anxiety. And a lot of folks start out there. But he found that 3 months after that first journey, the anxiety was coming back up. So he was able to get approved again. But then from there, and it wasn't a linear sort of progression, but he began to see the consciousness in everybody, began to see the consciousness in his cancer. And yes, I think he was able to do that with the 7 psilocybin journeys, and with the support before and after that went around that. So yeah, very, very, very important. All right, let's switch back to Jason, because you participated in the Sanctuary Church's Sacred Passages, and they put PS in front of everything with an S. So yeah, go ahead and describe that for folks.
Well, first off, just to kind of, continue down this thread here for a moment. in our country, death has been like shoved into the back room and kind of, made taboo for so long that when you have this psychedelic journey, for me, having a psychedelic journey and experiencing this, what feels like a continuation and realizing that this reality isn't all there is. Um, it lasts for a little while, but then you come back and you're like immersed in this Western mindset. So this constant kind of back and forth between, you know, uh, death and this ongoing feels to me like extremely informative. Um, and like I said, I'm lightheaded again here. So can you repeat your question again, Chris? Sorry.
Tell us a little bit more about your experience with Sanctuary as a psilocybin church.
Okay. Well, first off, I have a home health care crew that kind of helps me with just navigate life. So I had sought out a church as a way to provide some protections first off, because I was going to be growing these mushrooms. I didn't want to get them in trouble. Um, and so the church was more like a strategy, just this umbrella from a protection standpoint. But then it's grown into a group that I absolutely love. I'm in a book club there and such. And so um, a death doula that I met through the church, and I started this sacred passage program, where it's basically a structured way to um, take individuals that have been diagnosed with a life-threatening condition and do a psychedelic ceremony, using mushrooms, but do it um, in a ceremonial fashion with people that you love and such. And so the session I went through was with my family, with this death doula, with several members from the church. We did it here at my house. We did it with what we believe is as much legal protection as possible, just using the Religious Freedoms Act. So from a from a I might be biased, but to me, it feels like a wonderful way to do it. Uh, it was in a comfortable place. It was in my home. It was with people I love. It was people that I know. Um, we set an intention, um, and just it was a magical day. It kind of helped me. At that point, I was actually pursuing voluntary stop eating and drinking. My body had shut down to the point that I thought that I was done. So I was kind of like, okay, well, this part's done. That's cool. I'm gonna move on. And so ended up doing a psychedelic journey shortly before that left me with this impression of just like moving on a day-to-day basis. I resigned from some boards I was helping on and kind of just like backed out of the responsibilities I had in this lifetime. And then moved on to a day by day. And that day by day has now turned into a year. So it's been a fascinating ride, but that's where I'm at.
Yeah, thank you. You reminded me when you said, with protections. So here we have a clinical trial. Obviously, that's legal. We have the state regulated models, Colorado and Oregon, where Arlene and Amy participated, and we're going to get to that in 10 seconds. There's also Jamaica, for example, where psilocybin is legal, and the Netherlands, and there are retreats also held in Spain and Portugal that I'm aware of. But then there is decriminalized jurisdictions. Deb lives in an area where psilocybin is decriminalized. There are other places around the country in Massachusetts, Michigan, California, Washington, the state of Washington. So everybody just can decide, where and how you want to participate in this medicine. And New Mexico will be really interesting because that is the first state legislated medical model. Both Colorado and Oregon are adult supported use models. And what that means is Arlene and Amy did not need a DSM-5 diagnosis in order to participate in a trial or in a medical model. So yeah, Arlene, do you want to start and talk more about the group retreat model?
Yeah, happy to share. For us, we have a really robust program. It's not your typical cancer retreat getaway for a weekend. We call it a 9-week program. We put people through an interview, make sure there's no red flags, make sure they're healthy enough to join. And then we put them through a medical screening with doctors that we're familiar with, and also just getting permission through their oncology team to make sure that, you know, their heart is healthy enough and that there's no contraindicative medicine for them to be able to participate. And then for the preparation, we provide 3 individual coaching sessions, and then we do 1.5 hour group sessions where everyone gets to meet each other and everyone meets the facilitators all before they even physically show up for the retreat. The retreat itself is 4 days, 5 nights. Moving forward, we're going to do 2 doses. So we're going to do a smaller handshake dose the first day, and then the second day we do the full. And then we provide the same wraparound service afterwards, where we provide 3 more group integration sessions, 3 more one-on-ones. And then most recently, we started hosting what we call the alumni get-together for long-term integration, where we just hold monthly get-togethers for everyone that voluntarily wants to check in, wants to continue integrating their experience. We hold space for that. We do it in a group setting. Our retreat sits on a private property that is 30 acres of forest. We roll up these garage doors, and it's just a wall of forest trees that you look out into while you're on your plant medicine journey. Highly vetted facilitators, indigenous wisdom keepers with 20 years of Andean Peruvian training, with their Wachuma elders, playing and singing the songs that they've been taught, that's been passed down through their lineage. So very powerful, but also the head facilitator is also a marriage and family therapist. So just being able to hold both worlds and being able to speak both scientifically, but also holding honor and to their beliefs and their lineage, and respecting the plant medicine at the same time. And it's interesting to have that group setting. So I was given the privilege of being able to sit in for the most recent retreat that we had as an observer. And you see the energy kind of sweep through the room. So at first it was like grief, and you see everyone kind of pick up on each other's grieving. Not everyone is grieving, but like more than half the room was. And then afterwards, about an hour after that, like the sweep of joy just kind of goes through the room, and just everyone's laughing, including the facilitators. Like you just feel the sense of joy moving through the room. So it's interesting. And at one point, our participants were calling out each other's names in the middle of their trip and checking on each other. And that was actually really lovely and really sweet. And also during the first retreat that we had, there was a participant who had never done psychedelics before, had really cold feet. She literally walked out, and I thought she was not coming back. And she found the courage to, knowing that the rest of us were there going on this journey with her. She's not doing this alone. So there's something magical and something very sweet about being able to do it in a group setting, where you're not awkwardly in a clinical setting with like a doctor staring down at you the entire time, all alone in like a very sterile environment. That's all I have to say. Happy to share more. I can keep going on about this.
Yeah, Amy.
Yeah, that's a great description, Arlene. I could just jump in and say that, you know, as someone who's grown my own mushrooms and prior to cancer was into just doing it all on my own, I would only maybe one other person, but, you know, definitely not a group. I was very nervous about the way other people were going to respond. These people that have never tried this before, you know, how is this going to impact my ability to go deeply into my journey? And that is something I'll mention, that, you know, that's a factor in the group, is that there could be someone that has a really extreme reaction, and it could, for me, I'm concerned how that might negatively impact my trip. But everything was fine. And what I got more from the group setting was I did have a sense of this kind of like hive mind, if you will, very strange, like feelings of like the energy inside of me saying, now we're going to go over to this person, kind of telling me that. They're like, okay, we're going over here now, you know? So there was a sense of the connection with everyone there. And that was unique. And I do feel not just that, but the integration before and after, it created a really unique healing environment for these women who can come together all with the same problem. And I mean, relatively speaking, have gone through similar things, and the group was very helpful for that. And final point about our program is just to Deb's point, you know, she was feeling it was years ago now, but desperate to find access to this, you know, and that is what prompted us to create this group. It's a legal, very safe way by other cancer people to allow you to do this, as you say, without a DSMR diagnosis.
Yeah. I'm curious, Amy, with your background in depth psychology, which I'll say this and it'll be out of ignorance because the only way I relate to that is like shadow work. But so what do you see? How can you apply depth psychology to what your experience and what your observations are with psychedelic psilocybin journeys?
Well, I think a lot of depth psychology relates to the concept of like a transpersonal realm, meaning something that kind of connects us all. Like specifically, they talk about the collective unconscious being something that is like a higher domain to which we all have access. So I feel that you could say, especially in a group setting, when we all enter this domain together, that we are experiencing the transpersonal. So we are allowed to break out of our ego and thereby think about reality from a different perspective. That's ultimately healing.
Ah, okay, great.
And the concept of a
Jason-
soul. Depth psychologists like to talk about soul. And I think that you can experience and tap into soul or psyche, as they might call it, more easily when the ego is suppressed and you're allowed to more freely enter that area and experience it.
Yeah, and we know that psychedelics mean soul or psyche revealing or manifesting, so it's perfect. Psychedelics, depth psychology. Jason, I'd like to go back to you if I could, because you said something about your family participated, and I guess that hadn't registered before. And so almost every single time that question comes up, journeying with your family. So what was that like for you?
Oh, well, it depends on which family members you're talking about. Um, there's that, like I said, I was raised Catholic, and so like my dad, my stepmom, and such, they're very against this notion of anything besides this very like dogmatic approach. Um, I've got a brother that's a cop. I've got another brother that in a career and such. And so it's like, they're very cautious and very oh, you got to watch the law. You got to, these kind of things. Don't know if it's legal or not. I've got another brother that joined me, on the journey, and he and I had a wonderful time. So it kind of just depends on which family member, what their perspective is and such. So I think it's fun to challenge kind of the thought process and compare notes and such. So I enjoyed having these conversations with family and
Yeah, I
hearing.
love that. And I'm so glad you said it's not like, oh, it's for everybody and it's the best thing. Nope, not always. Deb, have you've had experience with working with families, haven't you?
Yeah, in the beginning of this year, it really consumed me because we worked with the members of the family. The person who was dying, it was months of this. I really put a lot of other work on hold because, you don't know when you're going to die. You just don't know that. Nobody knows how much time is in their hourglass, is what I always like to say. And that's even true if you're not sick, if you don't have a diagnosis. So um, I always think that working with the family is the optimal way to go if all the family members are on board. I've worked with parents and children. I've worked with SIBs. I've worked with, I work with husbands and wives. I've done a lot of work in that area, and it's just such a beautiful thing to remember those last moments. Sometimes, since I'm trained in MDMA as well, sometimes MDMA is a better choice. It just depends what kind of meds the person's on who has the diagnosis. Psilocybin is by far the safest. Ketamine can be also safe depending upon what's also going on. It's a short trip, which is also, why I like to work with ketamine. And it's legal. At least I'm trained in it. It's legal where I am. So, these are all important. The thing that you said earlier, though, I wanted to touch on that about a group journey, because I've been in many group journeys as a participant, and I've also led a bunch of group journeys. And I've always been used to having a spare room where someone who's having a really difficult time can go there. I have to say, when I worked with Claudia, who I know Arlene and Amy worked with in in Oregon, in Portland, um, there was someone in my group journey. I was going for my practicum to be certified in Oregon, which, by the way, I decided I didn't want to do because I'm not really happy with the model in Oregon. But I've done all the work and all that stuff. But there was someone in my group who had a very, very loud and disturbing reaction, and she stayed in the group. It was the first experience I've ever had like that. And they don't take people out of the group. In the indigenous world, the person stays in the group, is what I was told. So that was also kind of interesting. And if that happens in a family, it's also something to think about. I've never had that experience working with any families. There's definitely difficult moments, but not enough that would the person would ask to go somewhere separate, or the group members would be uncomfortable with that person. So yeah.
Yeah, on the family thing though, you said it. All the parties have to agree. But even with that, I think as a facilitator, you need to suss out whether that still makes right sense. I mean, there was a couple where the wife and the husband wanted to do a psilocybin journey together, and it was the wife who had cancer. And her idea of the psilocybin journey was for her husband to ask for forgiveness from an affair he had had many years ago. All right. Well, that wasn't the husband's idea of why he was going to journey psilocybin journey with her. So they called it off, right? And I'm not sure if they went on and did separate journeys and then integrated together or not. But it's always a matter of what are the intentions, what's behind it, and trying to figure that out. So
And they're
I
not
want to give time for questions. What?
the journey is not predictable. I mean, for sure, stuff will come up, and you can have an intention, but you actually can't decide something's going to come up in the journey. Like, even with the intention, things can be very different. So yeah.
Yep, exactly. But the more that you can look internally and decide whether or not this is really a good thing or what is your real intention, I think goes a long way. Yeah, I want to leave time for questions, but I also want.
Wait. One more thing. And we're not raised in a world where the internal journey is really valued. We're raised in a world where the external journey is really validated. So this is one of those things that not everybody's going to be on board, because some people don't have that experience. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So let's shift sort of not real quickly, but because this has been amazing. But I'd like to hear from you in terms of, well, what are you doing differently now? Or maybe more importantly is, what would you like to see going forward in this specific field? And Amy, maybe I could start with you.
Yes. I'll take something from what Jason said again, is I kind of have in a positive way, a fuck it attitude. I'm much braver. And because of that, like, I'll approach people, I'll share my ideas where before I would keep quiet. And that's only led to fantastic things for my career, my personal fulfillment. And it's just, um, that's been a really wonderful impact. I'm a braver person, and I'm moving forward with that. And what we would like to see as Survivorship Collective is broader legalization, broader training of medical professionals, and even something like insurance paying for this kind of group therapy, that doctors would know about organizations like us and be able to refer their patients there for legal treatment.
Yeah, excellent. And by the way, I forget if you mentioned this. So the Survivorship Collective, you know, takes all comers, and if you're approved. And by that I mean, if you can afford to pay, great. If you can afford to pay it forward, great. And if you can't, then you know they work. You guys work really hard to help people
Absolutely.
journey.
We're a
Yeah.
nonprofit. We raise funds for people to supplement the part of the journey they cannot afford. And it's absolutely, if there's a monetary concern, don't hesitate to come to us, and we will work with you and provide a scholarship.
Yeah, great. So Jason, what I heard you say, which I absolutely loved, and I'm going to use the word, you didn't say churlish, but you're really careful with your time. And I love that. You're being intentional about how you choose to spend it. So obviously that's one way that you have shifted, but is there anything else in terms of how the psilocybin journeys has changed what you are doing?
Well, yes, I mean, obviously, just the way I live life is radically different. I mean, not radically different. I've always been kind of a, you know, high energy, charge, go have fun, stuff like that. But it's always been with more of a planning aspect. Now I'm trying to ditch the planning mind a little more. It's still very, very there. It's like I automatically predict out 10 years, da da da. But um, it's kind of with this idea of predict out 10 years, but then throw that away because it's, what's happening right now is the one. This conversation is the most important thing in my life I could be doing right now. And so trying to throw the rest of it away is an ongoing practice. I don't want to pretend to have that figured out because I certainly do not, but that's the attempt.
Yeah, such wise words. Arlene, what do you think?
Yeah, very similar thoughts. Like Jason, I used to be very much more uptight, took things very seriously because I'm like, I have this one life to live. I can't afford to mess up. And yeah, I constantly have to remind myself that it'll be okay. I can figure things out the next day. I don't need to plan out all the details for the next week, like right now, at this very moment. Like it'll be okay. I will be held. And as Amy alluded, would love to see more access and affordability. The state regulated legal route is stupid expensive, and it would be amazing for insurance to be able to help cover this because we don't really have a mental health care system in this country. It doesn't really exist. So would love to see more access to that.
Yeah, thank you. So Deb, we know that you went on and became an end of life doula, and you've brought forward your body work and your other integrative practice skills forward to do this work. But how else has your experiences changed you going forward?
Well, I'd rather be happy than right. And I do everything I can to stay in a good mood. I go to a lot of shows. Deadhead, I travel a lot. And I got to tell you, for the 3 years, I just passed the 3-year anniversary of my husband's death. And I got to tell you, I was barely home. I went to see a lot of friends. I went to work with a lot of people. I had a lot of music, and now I'm home, and I have these retreats, and I'm working from home, and it's a different vibe. But I have to say, knowing that we create with every thought, which is what I believe, it's so much more important to, yeah, there's I say, like, no hurry, no worry, no time wasted, no shame, no blame, no time wasted. And I really believe that. I believe that everything that's happened has really led you to where you are now, and there's value in all things. And um I just look at life in a really different way. I always want to leave my space better than when I came to it. that's really important to me. I try to really be that person that I want to be, and when I'm not, go back into meditation. Somebody said something about meditation. I use cannabis. I mean, that's a real good short-term way to get into my real vibrational elevation. I'm a big believer in the altered state. I'm a breath worker since 1988. And I use all these tools. I got to tell you this one. I had two friends that were recently in a motorcycle accident. They both were killed. They're amazing, amazing people. It really disrupted my community. I was in bed for like a day about it. I was very, very sad about it. And then I asked for help from my husband and from them and I went to bed, and I woke up in the morning, and I really did just sit straight up, and I said, I have the tools and I can help people do this. And I know how to do this. And I created a Zoom, and we did a whole thing, we did a whole like 11 ways to walk through grief, and we just did it. I just pulled it together. And I find that when I'm in service, it really helps me.
Love that. All right. I would love to open it up to your questions. Please do raise your hand, since it's hard for me to look at all those chat messages. So if you have a question, please raise your hand. As you're thinking about your question, I did want to mention, Jason had said that pain went hand in hand with his quadriplegia, and that is so true of anybody in palliative care or hospice care or people with other life-threatening illnesses. And so psilocybin, I said that there's research being done on that, but certainly anecdotally, we hear over and over and over again that psilocybin has helped their pain. So I just wanted to kind of emphasize that. So Rihanna, I think you were first.
Hey, Chris, thank you yet again for another fantastic sharing. And to Amy and Deb and Arlene and Jason, a deep bow of respect. My question is really simple. Amy, can I quote you as saying, cancer gave me my life back? Thank you. You guys really just lifted my spirit today, because I just did my practicum this weekend in Colorado. One of the first legal psilocybin group experiences. And it's people like you who've faced your own death and chosen psychedelics, or psychedelics chose you, however you want to say it, that as much as the regulatory model has so many problems, it's also so important that if we're going to bring this medicine into Western culture, we have to play by some of their rules, which, that's a whole nother topic. But thank you, the four of you, for being brave and sharing your journeys and being in this life together.
Thank you, Rihanna.
Yeah.
Amber.
Hi, not sure. Hopefully you can hear me. I'm a end of life here in Houston, and I have offered medicines to some of my clients before, but only on the very early end of our relationship, where they were recently diagnosed, and so they were still obviously eating and drinking. Most of my death work actually deals with vigil sitting and sort of the active dying phase, and I was curious as to what people's experiences were in terms of how soon before death were you able to actually give a dose that they were able to tolerate and keep? So even using the lemon teaking method, where you just have to drink the lemon juice or the acid down into their stomach, were they able to keep that if they've already sort of stopped eating and drinking? Or is this really something that has to happen pretty much earlier on in the state where they are healthier to be able to process this medicine? I guess that's my question. Thank you.
Deb, you want to answer that?
Well, that's why ketamine works so well. I mean, ketamine can really work well for people that are dying, but it's not that hard on your stomach. It's dissolvable through like a trachea or something. I mean, there's a number of ways to use ketamine, but I think what you're doing is really important. I love that you're with them in the beginning, and I love that you're with them at the end. And it really does change And that's why I say the beginning of the year, I was working with these two families. It was just like all consuming through the various like stages of their diagnoses. And it's something that when I finished working with them, that was a lot. That was a lot this summer. I took this summer off. I mean, I really worked with them since like February, January, February. And it made me reevaluate what I want to do too with people. It's, you know, there's also a situation of how much are you going to charge with this if you're a death doula. There's also I like to stay in the training too. I like to keep up with my own training and my own nurturing, and when do I get time to do that, and how do I pay for that, and all and those things really matter. So I just encourage you to really just, you know, be good to yourself. I think one of these things that we discover through the psychedelic work is how hard on ourselves we've always been. And that's the place where when we all can step back, we're like, wow, you know, when I judge somebody else, I've been judging myself this whole time. And that's why life looks like this. And that's why cancer can be a big gift, because you just don't have that space to like, you know, that space is so intimate now. You don't have this distance. You are now in the space of what can I do with what I have right from where I am right now? That's it.
I could say something to that question really briefly from what we've learned from our Indigenous wisdom keeping facilitators. Arlene, correct me if I'm wrong about this, but there's like, we will not recommend someone take a journey until they've done a lot of physical healing and they've gone through treatment and they've had some space and time to step away from that. Because Arlene, would Claudia say that the physical body is going to be taking up that energy as opposed to the mental? How have you described that? Do you mind?
Yes, we recently interviewed a potential participant who had surgery like a month before wanting to come on one of our retreats. And our lead facilitator is like, no, that's too soon. Your plant medicine journey is going to be focused on the physical healing, and it's not going to get, it's not going to focus on the mental healing because that is very top of mind. That's what your body is currently still trying to heal. So that's where the plant medicine is going to go. So yeah, for us, it's like finding that sweet spot of several months to a year out after they are done physically healing before tapping into the medicine. This
And
is
so maybe
not
that
the
would apply
case.
in an end of life situation where if you're so physically disabled, you know, that it would not be effective at that point. But that's just my
Yeah,
comment about that.
Yeah,
but
I'd
also,
like to add to that, Amber, because what you're hearing here is it depends. And yeah, I would use the term physically frail. And also you would use the term that the veil has thinned sufficiently where you're already on a psychedelic journey. And psychedelics aren't going to help you, or psychedelics might in fact interfere in that thinning veil journey. So, you know, we talk about that all the time, but yet there's never any one absolute answer. So everybody, I think, here would agree, the sooner that a person can participate in psilocybin or whatever, for example, the better. I mean, the example I gave of Thomas Hartle, he had 7 psilocybin journeys. So that was a huge advantage for him. But certainly I know from our study and from the hundreds of stories I have heard, people do facilitate journeys very close to the end of life. And the dosing is important. Sometimes it's not, your system is shutting down and metabolism isn't as good. And sometimes oral ingestion is also not going to work. So it's a matter of, you know, the route of administration, the intention, medical clearance. When the person is really close to the end of life, yes, medical clearance becomes really important as well. And I loved, you know, Amy and Arlene's story of what their facilitator had said. So if it's too close into a surgery, yes, that is probably not a good idea. So I think it depends.
Arlene, were you going to say something else about that though?
oh, that this is just for people who are not stage 4 metastatic, close to end of life. For those people, they're always going to be on treatment. There is no end to that. So that rule goes out the window in that case for us.
Yeah, right. I'm sorry, I interrupted. Yes.
Yeah.
So again, it's like
It depends.
It really does depend. And then I will also throw this in, because if you're close to the end of life and you're going, I want to do a psilocybin journey, you know, who are we to say no? I mean, come on, they're going to die. So I'll do the journey. Nancy, I think you were next.
Yeah, hi. I'm 82 years old now, and I mention that because this whole topic got my interest when I was in my mid-30s. And at that time, Stanislav Grof, who is a psychiatrist, was doing LSD work with terminally ill people, and he was very scientific and fact-oriented and practically went into a state of shock when all of these people of different religious traditions and atheists, okay, the discussion of atheism is what brought this up in my mind. They all came back from their LSD experiences and they said, we went to this place where there were no more questions. And so Stan Grof wrote about this in a book called Realms of the Human Unconscious. And actually, it's still available. So I just wanted to throw that in as a little piece. I know it's not psilocybin, but still, it's a you know, altering substance, and I just couldn't resist. Thank you.
It's clearly an altering substance. So yeah, yes. Yeah, I think we lost somebody. But anyway, Samit. Hey, Samit, how are you?
Good. Just unmuting myself. Yeah, I had it in the comment. I thought I would just chime in. I was part of a study earlier this year that gave people with pretty advanced cancer high doses of psilocybin extract, mushroom-derived pure psilocybin. And there were some medical parameters that were cleared, you know, liver functioning and things like that, basic cardiovascular functioning. The people in the group were very, very ill. I mean, they had edema, they had you know, in some cases, they were days away from hospice care. They were on opiates. They were taking, you know, there were booster doses offered. Everybody who took the psilocybin had a wonderful experience. We're actually having a memorial service for some of those who have passed on from that study. So, you know, with proper clearance, which hopefully there'll be some guidelines for it coming up, there are just some basic things to pay attention to, but in the right set and setting with trained facilitators, with appropriate screening, I think psilocybin is a wonderful gift for these people. And I also wanted to chime in. Indigenous models, sometimes the patient is not given the medicine, the healer is. And so for those of us who are in end-of-life care, who are not in a place where psilocybin is legal, where psychedelics are legally available, we may still benefit as the healers of people who are dying to have these experiences to keep us rejuvenated and connected and effective.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Samit.
Great.
Michael.
A couple of things. Well, the first thing is thank you to everybody. I mean, it's wonderful it's healing actually, to hear from fellow travelers as far as confronting your own death as well as being healers. Just a real quick request for Chris, please give us the list of the psilocybin trials, especially because right now with the government shutdown, searching clinicaltrial.gov is, you know, not what it ought to be. So thank you.
All right, will do, Michael. Anthea, so nice to see you. So nice to see all of you, but Anthea, nice to see you.
Hi, Chris. Hey, everybody. Yeah, just to add to the question around psilocybin at very end of life, I'm an end of life doula and work mainly with psilocybin. But I have had quite a few people where we've had medical clearance. They've really, really wanted to do a psilocybin journey and been quite close to end of life, and it just ended up not being appropriate for various reasons. And that's where it's always about, like, you know, just assessing it moment by moment and kind of, you know, it became about, well, the journey wasn't the most important thing. And because it consumes a lot of time and energy, and their focus then shifted to, well, I only have so much energy, I only have so much time left, and maybe being with my loved ones is more important. But there was always like an element of like disappointment maybe in that pivot, where, you know, managing that as well, now you're preparing for the big journey. So, you know, it doesn't matter, it's okay. And some of that preparation work we can use to prepare for the big journey, right? And it's okay if you don't end up taking, you know, a substance, right? And the integration then also with the family afterwards. So I kind of use the model for psychedelics when working with people end of life, and you can do a lot of the preparation work. You know, the journey is the dying journey, and then the integration is with the family. So I just wanted to add that perspective as well.
Yeah, thank you, Anthea. And so you've heard several times about the need for a medical screening. So with the group that Arlene and Amy work with, Dr. Seth Mayer conducts the medical screening. So it's a physician doing that. I certainly know physicians. I have a lot of resources on my website, which is merely EOLPC.org, but you'll get that in my email. So check it out if you're interested. Because it is critical. So Jake, I think we'll take one more question and then that will be it. You still on mute?
I'm not a practitioner. I'm just a guy. I have chronic back pain, have had for all of my adult life. And it's not a terminal situation, except in terms of choosing my own time. Also, about a year ago, I was diagnosed with the most aggressive strain of prostate cancer. So I've been through a bunch of treatments about that. A long time ago, because of my chronic pain, making me depressed, I was put on antidepressants, and those antidepressants, as all of you know, make psilocybin so that it's, for me anyways, ineffective. So 3 days ago, I started tapering off my antidepressants in order to prepare myself for a mushroom therapeutic session or sessions. And I'm a retired furniture maker, just one horse operation. So I live close to the land, and I'm not, so I'm looking for opportunities to take part in mushroom therapeutic therapy, and I'm not clear from this. This whole thing has just been amazing. Thank you for your participants. Thank you very much. I would like to ask the question about groups that can assist me in my quest to have therapeutic psilocybin experiences.
So let me answer a couple of your questions there. First of all, you can email me, and you'll have my email when I send out the email with the recording. However, in the state of Oregon, being on an SSRI is not an exclusionary criteria. The physicians I follow do not rule out psilocybin when you're on SSRIs. In fact, the point, generally speaking, is do no harm. So if coming off of an SSRI creates withdrawal symptoms, that actually impacts the psilocybin journey. And so typically speaking, this is typical, it's hard to generalize, then the psilocybin dose is increased, plain and simple. So, okay, Deb, if you want to answer that question, and then we're going to close.
Yeah, this is one of the things about studies, right? The studies said that you couldn't use SSRIs. So the folks that were underground, we're talking underground folks, listened, because we don't test in those ways. And most of us didn't deliver to anybody who was on SSRIs, and we asked them to taper. And over the years that I've been doing this, I've seen that that's really gotten in the way. So just like the studies, just like medicalization of this is why this is a really a multi-layered a multi-layered process for facilitators, and why we need to keep learning and why we need to keep practicing. Because what we know now is you just got to give a bigger dose. And we know now that these ideas that they had in the studies were, they want to make the study work. That the idea is to prove the idea that they went into the study with. And they didn't want any deviation from that. So they didn't work with people that weren't going to have a good result in general either. And that's really how this goes. So I think what you said was really important. This is, in my own work, I work with people. My sweet spot is I work with people for 10 weeks before they journey. But if they have a diagnosis, I can't do that. And I will jump right in. I will prepare them. We will have preparation before we begin, but we don't have 10 weeks time, and I'm not going to deny somebody that experience. And and guess what? They can get mushrooms. Mushrooms are so easy to get in the DMV, in DC, Maryland, Virginia. You can get them at a dispensary. When I can't directly work with someone, I will say to them, go to a dispensary in DC, go pick up your own mushrooms. So yeah.
Well, okay, we're going to leave on that note.
I want to say, Jake, congratulations on what you're undertaking, and I'm really excited for you, and I applaud your bravery, and I really hope for the best, and I think you'll have a great experience.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I want to say that too. Listen, I think that no matter what you've heard, you are your highest authority, and I think that's the most important thing. I'd love to hear what your results are. I hope you'll get in touch with us again.
Okay.
All right. Oh my gosh. This has been so wonderful. Again, this is why I do this work, because I get to meet the most loveliest of people who dedicate their lives to this work and do the work. And so please reach out if you need any help. If you didn't catch the contact information in the chat for anybody who wants to leave it, then I will send that out in the email. And I will try and get that recording out within the next couple of days. Well, I will in the next couple of days. But anyway, blessings to you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you all.
Chris. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you everyone.
Much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going. Bye.